See, mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. See if anybody in the chat can actually hear me. All right, let's see. So we're definitely live. Let me just add the docket and then we'll get started. All right. Hey, what's going on, Mega Montana? As soon as this docket updates, we'll get started. In the meanwhile, let me do the intro, which is welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 305, Space and Technology. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those on the community tab that are posted weekly. Also, as a reminder, as usual, we're still doing IT mentorship. So if you want to get into IT as a career, we do mentorship on that, as well as if you're already in IT trying to transition into another role and need some help and some coaching, we also provide that as well. So if you want us to get in contact with you, either email us or leave a comment under the video after the live stream is over. All right, let's get started. Also, if you want to join the panel, the link will be in the chat. Just make sure you raise your hand so that we can acknowledge you and we can promote you to the panel, or else you won't be seen. All right, let's get started with the first item on the docket. This one is from CNN.com. Indian woman gives birth to twins at age of 73. A 73-year-old woman in India has given birth to twin girls. Ramadi Mangayama, a farmer from the southern state of Andhra Pradesh, is believed to be the oldest person ever to give birth. She became pregnant through IVF in vitro, and doctors delivered the babies via cesarean section Thursday. The surgery went well. The mother and the babies are all healthy, no complications. Dr. Sanakya Ayala Umashankar, the director of Ahala IVF, who performed the C-section, told CNN. Magayama and her husband, 80-year-old E. Raja Rao, has been married since 1962 but had never been able to conceive naturally. They approached Umashankar in 2018, and after preliminary tests were promising, the doctor agreed to give them one round of IVF treatment. Given Magayama's age, the doctors perform a C-section and will keep her under observation for the next 21 days. We are not allowing the mother to breastfeed, and the babies will be fed through the milk bank, Umashankar said. Rao, 80, has already begun making plans for his daughter, said Umashankar. And for Magayama, it is a new lease of life. At the age of 73, he said. She is very confident now, more confident than ever in her life, and she is looking forward to the next chapter of her life with the kids, Umashankar added. This is beyond anything I've ever seen before. Beyond anything I've ever seen before. I don't even know where to begin on how to do an analysis on this. We need somebody like Dr. Phoenix to actually come on here and actually give some analysis to this, because I'm at a loss of words. I mean, I'm a tech guy myself through and through, but I don't even understand, what was the urgency to even do something like this? Hey, what's going on, Rain and Woman? Good evening to you. Just one fro two. What's going on? Yeah, the reason why this is the first item on the docket is because it's out of the realm of space and technology, but it still falls aligned along the lines of next generational or fourth industrial or sort of society where old people, old women are just having children. I mean, she's ready to go into a senior care facility and she's having children. That's something. Something needs to be said about that. But if you plan on having this sort of pro-black society, this is probably the path or trajectory that the community may go down. You may see older black women having children like this in their 60s and their 50s, and on top of that, could possibly be twins. The link for the to get on the panel is in the chat. So if you want to get on the panel, please raise your hand. We could use some more raining women's. Hmm. Hmm. It, well, I guess according to the article, it's probably never too late. It probably it's probably better late than never, right? That's an interesting point, though. That's something we're probably gonna have to circle back to because Dr. Finks will have more insight on something like this. Let me jump to the next article on the docket. This one's from Tom'sHardware.com. Peg leg implants Raspberry Pi Zero Ws in humans. We've heard of people doing strange things with single board computers, using a Raspberry Pi Compute Model 3 Lite to make an open source tablet. Sure. Filling a server rack with hundreds of Raspberry Pi 4 units. Go for it. Peg leg goes a step further, pun intended, by allowing people to become their own portable networks by implanting a Raspberry Pi Zero W in their bodies. That's right, the biohackers are Raspberry Pi enthusiasts too. Hackaday reported on the second iteration of PegLeg on August 29th. It sounds like the initial version was a bit unwieldy. Hackaday compared it to an Altoids 10. The second iteration ditched every non-essential aspect of the device, such as its USB ports, and replaced the battery with a QI coil that enabled wireless charging from outside the body. It also switched from using a wireless router's mainboard to using the Raspberry Pi Zero W. The first version of the peg leg was only implanted in one person who goes by Lef Anam, but the second was implemented in three, Lep Kaz and Mixal Lufer. Probably not their real names. Hackaday's report contains more information about the implantation process with pictures. So anyone interested in the biohacking aspect of this project should check it out. We'll focus on the aspects that are a little bit less wet. Pegleg Pirate Box, which according to its website is do-it-yourself anonymous offline file sharing and communication system built with free software and inexpensive off-the-shelf hardware to create a meshable network. That means anyone could theoretically connect to a Raspberry Pi Zero W to participate in anonymous chat, file sharing, and the like. This would be useful if, say, law enforcement agencies shut down other messaging platforms. Hackaday said that work has already started on the next version of PegLeg. Its creators hope to get the device's size down to that of a postage stamp, which could make the implant far less daunting. And they would eventually like to draw power directly from the human body. More information about PegLeg can be found on the project's website, just in case any of you are thinking about becoming Pi hackers. So this is something because you're talking about wearable computing implanted into your body. So this is on another level. This is beyond an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or something like that. You're talking about full-scale computing inside your body. The next step beyond that will be, neurological communication. So basically, what you think in your brain will be transmitted to the Raspberry Pi or the single board computer or the wearable device, and that will allow you to text message out and to read things out. For it to read out your thoughts and things like that. That's going to be the next level, and they're doing this right now. So you imagine the next iteration with 2020, late 2020, early 2022. This is going to be a thing, and this is where your fourth industrialized emerging markets and trends are going. So I mean, we covered Raspberry Pis in the past, but this is something really, really, edge level or bleeding edge, I should say, about tech, the tech field. And these are just regular people hacking this type of stuff. They're not actually, they're not scientists or anything. These are backyard or garage-based hackers. All right, let me get to this next article. All right, this one is from CNN.com. Scientists have identified the genes linked to left-handedness. For the first time, scientists have identified the genetic differences associated with left-handedness, a trait found in 10% of the human population. What's more, those genetic variants result in differences in brain structure, which might mean that left-handed people have better verbal skills than the right-handed majority. While previous research into twins has indicated that genes are at least partially responsible for controlling headiness or handedness, the new study conducted by scientists from the University of Oxford and published in the journal Brain is the first set to identify which genetic variants separate the lefties from the righties. The research could suggest a potential correlation between left-handedness and superior verbal skills, said Akira Weiberg, a medical research council fellow in the University of Oxford who worked on the study. This raises the intriguing possibility of future research that left-handers might have an advantage when it comes to performing verbal tasks. But it must be remembered that these differences were only seen as average over very large numbers of people, and not all left-handers will be similar, he said in the new release. Further research must be conducted to test this potential advantage, according to Gwenenol Duard, joint senior author of the study and a fellow at Oxford's Wellcome Center for Integrative Neuroimaging. We need to assess whether the higher coordination of the language areas between left and right side of the brain in the left-handers actually gives them an advantage at verbal ability. For this, we need to do a study that also has in-depth and detailed verbal ability testing, she said. Funded by the UK's Medical Research Council and Wellcome, a UK medical research charity, the researchers studied the DNA of 400,000 people, including 38,332 left-handers from the UK Biobank, a database comprising of health information of volunteers across the country. They isolated 4 genetic regions associated with left-handedness. 3 of those regions were linked to proteins that influence brain structure and development. Specifically, the proteins were connected to microtubules, a component of cell scaffolding, or the cytoskeleton. Cytoskeleton determines the structure of the cells as well as the way they operate within the body. Previous research has demonstrated the cytoskeleton's influence on the left-right asymmetry in other species. Many animals show left-right asymmetry in their development, such as snail shells coiling to the left or right, Duarte said. By analyzing brain imaging from about 10,000 or of the people studied, the researchers found that the genetic variants related to left-handedness were associated with differences in the brain's white matter tracks. In particular, the tracks that connect the areas of the brain associated with language. What's more, Duarte told CNN these researchers indicated that in left-handed people, the left and right sides of the brain communicate in a more coordinated way. Left-handed people demonstrate a higher synchronization of the natural oscillations of your brain, and these oscillations still happen when you are idle. She said, a synchronization that occurs precisely again in the brain regions dedicated to language. The study also indicated an association between the aspects of the brain development linked to handedness and the likelihood of developing schizophrenia or Parkinson's disease. Dominique Furness, joint senior author alongside Duarte and a fellow at Oxford's Nuffield Department of Orthopedics, Rheumatology, and Muscular Skeletal Science, told CNN, it has long been known that there are slightly more left-handers amongst patients with schizophrenia than the general population. By contrast, there are slightly less left-handers with Parkinson's disease than the general population. The new research, Furness said, suggests that these diseases, along with handedness, are the product of fundamental differences in brain development, some of which is driven by genes. The researchers stress, however, that the association between handedness, schizophrenia, and Parkinson's indicates only correlation, not causation, and that the difference in terms of the number of people with the illness is very slight. This is very interesting stuff, because now with things like CRISPR, you may be able to create a strong population of, let's say, Black children that can actually be left-handed, which means that they would be a lot more advanced in speech and linguistics. But what's interesting here for me is that when you talk about melanated people or Africans, they spoke many different languages on the continent. They still do to this very day, but there's no data to show that these people are left-handed. In fact, I'd be even more interested in understanding what's the data and correlation behind ambidextrous people who can write with both their left and their right hand almost simultaneously. People who can juggle at a certain age, right? I've seen 5 and 6 year olds juggling, for example, if you do YouTube searches on that type of stuff. So these sort of complexities actually are being determined, also determine the acuteness of the brain itself, the development of the brain itself. Let me drop the link in the chat again. We got 25 people watching, only 15 likes. Please hit the like button if you're not going to participate in the chat. Mike Rizzi, what's going on, man? He says, seeing the article today about science reversing aging, Now I see a 72-year-old lady's getting knocked up. Imagine that. Imagine a youthful black male in his 20s, where his sperm is at his peak of best time for reproducing, knocking up an old lady at 70 plus years old. And we know that black don't crack in the black community. So, a 70-year-old black woman or a 65-year-old black woman is not the same as a white woman, man. So you may get Felicia Rashad walking around with a big belly, man. She could be a baby mama. It's crazy. All right, this one is from darkreading.com. State-sponsored cyber attacks target medical research. Online hackers from Russia, Vietnam, and especially China are targeting healthcare data and stealing intellectual property from hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and research universities, according to new report published today by security firm FireEye. This probably is right up Gabe's alley because I think he works for Mandiant. While cyber criminals continue to be the most prolific attackers, many of the most significant attacks appear to be intelligence operations aimed at stealing research or gathering information on specific individuals, states the Beyond Compliance Cyber Threats in Healthcare report. In particular, Chinese espionage groups appear to be focused on procuring cancer-related research, which the company argues is driven by increasing cancer mortality in China and the associated costs. There is not just one group focused on this, but multiple Chinese groups conducting these operations, says Luke McNamara, principal intelligence analyst at FireEye. Cancer is one of the leading causes of death in China, and there is a big focus on improving cancer treatments on the part of their pharmaceutical industry. The report collects both FireEye's internal research and open source intelligence on threats. The company found the most frequent threat is that of opportunistic cyber criminals compromising systems and destructive attacks such as ransomware. In the last quarter of 2018 and the first quarter of 2019, the company found multiple databases from healthcare organizations on sale on online black market forums. For example, a 4.3 gigabyte file of healthcare records from U.S. organizations, including patient data, driver's license, and insurance information, was being sold for $2,000. Personally identifiable information, PII, and protected health information, PHI, are often used to conduct fraud or to craft more focused attacks. Actors buying and selling PII and PHI from healthcare institutions and providers in underground marketplaces is very common and will almost certainly remain so due to this data's utility in a wide variety of malicious activity, ranging from identity theft and financial fraud to crafting of bespoke phishing lures, the report says. The healthcare industry is a popular target for online criminals, and nation state operators. In June, a number of medical testing service providers, such as LabCorp and Quest Diagnostics, announced a breach of their collection service partner, American Medical Collection Agency, resulted in almost 20 million patient records being stolen. Yet, attackers are also focusing heavily on research data, including information on research participants in pharmaceutical and biomedical intellectual property. FireEye's McNamara says the purpose of the tax likely falls into two buckets, he says. Some are focused on entities that have access to large data sets. Those attacks are about getting large scale data collection and furtherance of intelligence operations and finding specific people. McNamara says. Then there is the targeting of medical researchers by Chinese espionage groups. You see it going across multiple APT groups going back many years. The second category of cyber operations is particularly focused on cancer research, according to FireEye's report. In April, a China-linked espionage group attacked a U.S.-based health center focused on cancer research, attempting to lure researchers into clicking a document that referenced a research conference. Such attacks are not uncommon. One Chinese espionage group, APT-22, targeted the same institution for many years. An advanced persistent threat group is the industry term for sophisticated attacks that specifically target certain companies, organizations, or agencies. Another Chinese group, APT-41, targeted biotech companies and the medical subsidiary of a large corporation, FireEye stated. China is not the only actor targeting biomedical research. At least two Russian APT groups and a Vietnam-based group have conducted operations that have either targeted healthcare organizations or had a focus on the biological sciences. For example, one group, APT-28, sometimes called Fancy Bear, attacked the World Anti-Doping Association, WADA, which tests Olympic athletes for use on banned drugs and supplements. The report also underscores the threat posed by attacks that aim to have a cyber physical impact, such as ransomware that attempts to halt operations or the targeting of medical devices to harm patients. Looking forward, the increasing number of biomedical devices used for critical functions within hospitals and healthcare providers presents a growing security challenge. The report concluded, furthermore, given their importance and value, a growing willingness by cybercrime or in a period of heightened geopolitical tensions, nation-state actors to deploy disruptive and destructive tools may significantly increase the impact from these threats we have observed to date. I think this is very interesting because it's timely for what we were just discussing about in vitro and wearables and biohacking and things of that nature. I think that's a timely. This article is timely for that very reason because Gabe and myself are both cybersecurity people as our main careers. And what's happening here is that hospitals generate lots of data, PHI and non-PHI data. What happens with that PHI and non-PHI data and PII, the blast radius of all of your data inside your infrastructure becomes very wide. So the wider the blast radius, the greater the possibility and probability that you will be, that data will be targeted and will more than likely be compromised. Once data is compromised in the United States, all of this critical information, PII, your social security number, your phone number, your address, your driver's license, your mother's maiden name, your family, all of these areas of protected information has now been siphoned out to big state actors that are going to use that information that's static to then open up credit card accounts, mortgages. Now they're using that for mortgages, get access to other institutions. So if you work for a children's hospital, you could potentially create another phony identity or identity and spoof that very same institution and get more access to higher level instances and infrastructure. There's a whole lot of ways that a bad guy can actually leverage this information. And then they can also use that information to sell to third-party companies that are trying to get their way in. If you're a pharmaceutical company that's a startup, that information is very valuable. The research on cancer treatments and cancer research, that becomes very valuable because now all you have to do is, instead of doing extensive trials, you can pull those trials that's been stolen from other institutions, and then use that to create more drugs for yourself. Or you could take the intellectual property of the cancer research drug and then create your own, and now you can put the other company out of business. This is your day-to-day functioning of a cybersecurity person. This is what we do. This is what Gabe and myself actually do. You have to protect all of this information. Data is very important. You can take down a firewall, you can take down a router, you can take down a switch. That's fine. But once the data has been compromised, once the data leaves the environment and ends up in the bad guy's hands, you're screwed. DE Raptor, what's going on?
Oh, I'm okay, Mike. How are you doing?
Shalom, I'm good.
Hey, I'm not a security like you. I'm not a security expert like you, but I see a couple of things coming together in this, and that say Microsoft, they made Windows, and they left open doors that our security apparatus, the FBI, CIA, whatever, can get in through. And the people who know that these things exist, either they can sell it, they pass the information on to other people who can sell it. And now you got another part of this thing where everybody's going to be going towards wearables. And if all the information that I have is in my wearable, I got all my passwords in it, all somebody has to do is hack my wearable and go into the computer system, whether it be my medical records or my, I don't know, police report. And they can exploit other vulnerabilities inside that computer system. I don't know if I might be wrong about that, but that's pretty close to what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Once your identity has been compromised, whether it's from a medical institution, healthcare institution, or from a state institution like a registry of motor vehicles or a DMV, whatever you want to call it, it's a pain. Not just for the institution, but for you, because now you have to go back and change all your passwords, get a new set of keys for your house and things. Not a new set of keys, but a new, watch your mailbox and things like that. Because some of the oldest of data mining is dumpster diving. People climb into other people's trash bins and go through their mail that they didn't shred. So now they sent you a new card for a credit card. You've been waiting for it, but somebody already came by your house while you were at work and got that credit card that was sitting in your mailbox. You go to the suburbs and you see all these suburban houses with these mailboxes on the outside or near the street. It's not hard for somebody to drive by at a certain time and see the mailman is out there. They do their rounds, come by. They check the mailbox, see if there's anything that's potentially critical for you, such as a credit card, such as a social security card or something like that. boom, they got it. It's just a
Yep,
matter of chance.
I know what you're talking about because it happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, somebody, somebody swiped the bank card and was using
Hmm.
it. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't know what's going on. The bank, but let's see, I had about three instances where the bank called me and said, "Hey, I'm in Florida,"
Hmm.
and the bank called me and says, "Where are you?" I said, "Right now I'm in Florida." He said, "Well,
Hmm.
somebody just tried to use your card in Virginia."
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that happens. I mean, when we talk about like medical patient health records um, being compromised, that goes back before computers were even invented. I mean, we could talk about what they did to black people, like Henrietta Lacks, when they were working on um, when they were basically biohacking her. They were stealing her genes and compromising her body, for medical research. And then you think about the Tuskegee Airmen who were given syphilis. They're running all types of experiments on these black people. This was long before computers, and they were using the research from that to determine, the viability of the differences between African melanated people versus Caucasians. How come during slavery, how come the slaves didn't get sick? And all these white people were having these mass diseases inside their households, dying from, these various airborne diseases. They thought that black people were superior. They didn't have the research back then that they do now, but they thought that black people were superior. How come they're not getting sick?
Well, that's still the fear today. That's still the fear. The more research they do,
Hmm.
the more they find out that it's true.
Hmm. Hmm. We got 35 people watching and 24 likes. Please hit the like button if you're not going to participate in the chat. Yeah, so black people's medical record information should very well be protected. That's stuff that we have to protect. All right, let me get to the next article. All right, this one is from zdnet.com. Cybersecurity incident at U.S. power grid entity linked to unpatched firewalls. Hackers used denial of service flaw to reboot firewalls at an electric power grid operator for hours. A cybersecurity incident that impacted a U.S. power grid entity earlier this year was not as dangerous as initially thought, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, said last week. In a report highlighted the lessons learned from a past incident, NERC said hackers repeatedly caused firewalls to reboot for about 10 hours on March 5th, 2019. The incident impacted firewalls deployed at multiple power generation sites operated by a low impact operator and did not cause any disruption in the electric power supply. The incident only impacted network perimeter firewalls, which on March 5th were mysteriously going down for periods of up to 5 minutes. The firewall reboots continued for hours, prompting the power grid operator to start an investigation. Subsequently, Subsequent analysis determined that the reboots were initiated by an external entity exploiting a known firewall vulnerability, NERC said. The power grid operator eventually discovered that they had failed to apply firmware updates for the firewalls that were under attack. The reboot stopped after the operator deployed the proper patches. The operator blamed its failure to apply firewall security updates on the lack of proper firmware review process to vet security updates before being deployed. Work was being done on standardizing such process, but the procedure had not been ready in time, resulting in a bottleneck of firmware updates not being reviewed and deployed. The incident didn't result in a major intrusion. However, NERC intentionally highlighted the March 2019 attacks in order to draw attention to the fact that many companies may not be deploying firmware updates in a timely manner, resulting in security holes being open on their networks. NERC lays out a series of recommendations on dealing with firewalls and patches in the private report. A copy of this report was obtained by E&E News reporters, who first broke the story over the weekend. A quick summary of these recommendations are below, but we recommend reading the entire set in the report. Follow good industry practices for vulnerability and patch management. Reduce and control your attack surface. Use VPNs. Use access control lists. Layer defenses. Segment your network. Know your exploitable vulnerabilities so you can pursue fixes. Monitor your network. Employ redundant solutions to provide resilience on and online maintenance capabilities. So again, this is stuff that Gabe works on a lot. I think Gabe is in the infrastructure sector of utility companies, or at least that's where he came from. I myself have worked in incident response for quite some time, and I can tell you right now, a good vulnerability assessment program or remediation program would actually work wonders for some of these companies. The article points to the fact that they didn't have a good review process, probably because there's not enough people to actually do the process to begin with. Cybersecurity guys are overstretched, overworked, alert fatigue. So alert fatigue means that, or alert burnout means alert fatigue. So that means that you're responding to too many false alarms and things of that nature. So you don't have a whole lot of time to get to a vulnerability remediation program and a vulnerability assessment. I can tell you right now, I spend at least bare minimum, at least 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes on an incident, just to investigate it. If I get a dozen incidents in a day, whether they're false positive or true positive, or a true negative, my day has already been filled. Not to mention what kind of meetings I'm getting into, what kind of emails I need to respond to, and so on and so on and so forth. That becomes a problem.
What about in cases where the electric company, European electric company, they go before the board and say that we need this amount of money for security every year. Then they turn around and outsource the security, pay half of what they get from the community, and then the people that they outsource the job to have 100 other corporations that they have to deal with the same problem. And if they suppose you outsource this to India, you don't know who's working on your system. Somebody in India might be selling it to somebody in Pakistan or somebody in, you got a problem.
Right. That becomes something that we call vendor risk assessment. So vendor risk assessment would actually engage that third-party vendor to see if they are meet the security standards and compliance that you would need to actually secure your environment and to do business. So they would have limited access to pertinent information for your organization, but just enough to do their job. That should be the case, but I agree that that is still a problem. All right, let me get to the next article. All right, this one's from Forbes.com. Firefox plans controversial new encryption setting for millions, and update starts this month. Firefox quietly announced a major change to its Firefox web browser on Friday, explaining that after many experiments, we feel confident that enabling DOH, DNS over HTTPS by default is the right next step. The company assured its Blogspot that most of our users will benefit from the greater protections of encrypted DNS traffic. But there was also a recognition at some of the backlash against the new technology. When DOH is enabled, it added users will be notified and given the opportunity to opt out. So what's going on? Why the controversy and why the users might opt out, or why my users might opt out? The Internet Domain Name System is one of the greatest strengths and also one of the greatest weaknesses, as open traffic IP addresses and browsing activities can be profiled and your requests intercepted and manipulated. But with more and more of what is done online being encrypted, the very act of accessing specific websites can be encrypted as well. This is what DNS over HTTPS is all about, bypassing locally held domain name servers, sending encrypted traffic to a central server instead. DOH encrypts the addresses of websites, bypassing local internet service providers, ISPs, and connecting directly to central name servers likely managed by the companies behind the browsers themselves. This means that traffic cannot be hijacked, but it also means that many of the filtering and protection tools in place today, usually administrated by ISPs, will no longer work, and this is why it's controversial. The fear is that the safeguards might disappear with these changes. Internet service providers and child protection software holds lists of dangerous and prohibited sites. Some might be totally blacklisted. Think child sexual exploitation, terrorism, illegal activity. Others might be subjected to parental controls, pornography, violence. Mozilla says that its research found that OpenDNS parental controls and Google's Safe Search feature were rarely configured by Firefox users in the USA. In fact, they said only 4.3 users in the study of OpenDNS parental controls or Safe Search. This is important because it goes to the heart of one of the issues with DOH, bypassing such controls. As a result, the company explained, we're reaching out to parental control operators to find out more about why this might be happening. Mozilla has told me before that DNS over HTTPS offers real security benefits with their, this is misspelled, with their goal being to build more secure internet. In the meantime, Firefox will fall back to operating system defaults for DNS when there is user-driven requirement. This would include child protection technology being in place or enterprise controls. So essentially, if the browser is trying to limit which sites can be visited, Firefox will look to respect that and not override them. Mozilla says that it is working with providers and ISPs to make all of this work in practice. It will operate in a system where such protections add a canary domain to their block list. This means providing a deliberately blocked site to list that will alert Firefox, telling the browser that a protection is in place to in place and to block DOH. Such an approach is open to abuse by hackers who might spoof the system to block DOH for the wrong reasons. If we find that it is being abused to disable DOH, Mozilla has said, in the situations where users have not explicitly opted in, we will revisit our approach. A presentation from BT on the potential ISP challenges with DNS over HTTPS earlier this year warned that DOH will reduce the ability to derive cybersecurity intelligence from malware activity and DNS insight, open new attack opportunities to hackers, and result in an inability to fulfill government mandated regulation and court orders as potential concerns. And so the challenge will foster serious debate. DOH is now going to roll out gradually in the USA starting in late September. Initially, a smaller percentage of users will see the change, with Mozilla monitoring for any issues before the deployment is expanded. If this goes well, the company has said, we will let you know when we're ready for 100% deployment. The US is first, but the rest of the world will follow. A spokesperson for the UK Internet Service Providers Association told me that the debate on DNS over HTTPS is evidently a topic that polarizes opinion. However, our position is clear. ISPA believes that bringing in DOH by default would be harmful for online safety, cybersecurity, and consumer choice. This is an interesting debate because when you talk about securing people's web browser traffic, let me add people to the panel real quick. DOH would work great in IoT, Internet of Things. So DOH being DNS over HTTPS would actually work great for IoT because IoT has no human interaction, and IoT is vulnerable to outside attacks, right? Someone being able to hijack, let's say, an IoT device such as a refrigerator or a TV or some other household item, and redirect information from that IoT device that could have critical information on it, such as an Alexa or a Google Home or whatever these sort of smart devices are in your house. Redirect that information to said bad guy server, and now they have all your conversations, your communications, and other critical information that may be stored on that device. A refrigerator, being benign as it is, could potentially be listening if it has Alexa enabled. Could be listening to your conversations in the kitchen. If you had DOH enabled on, let's say, a refrigerator or some other device, even a car for that matter, a car connecting to a 5G grid, that car would be less likely to be hacked because the DNS over HTTPS could be connected directly to a protected server, rather than for it to just be open and vulnerable to a man-in-the-middle attack. Hey, what's going on, Lionel? What's going on, Super Triz? What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, Mike?
Hello.
I don't mean to derail the conversation, but you may have to slow that down and really unpack this, because this sounds like this is something important, and I really want to understand, because I'm not from a cybersecurity background, obviously, but I do understand, hypertext, whatever markup language, and hypertext transfer protocol. I know what those acronyms stand for, but as far as like the DNS, like, okay, so basically, can you break down? So I understand that basically when you access a website, there's actually like a number, as opposed to like the web address that you type in that has a name. There's actually like a numerical value like that has like
it's called an IP.
What is that called?
IP.
Okay, so IP. Okay, so can you explain conventionally, like if you go to a website, say, because when you said DNS, you said HTTPS, so I'm thinking that's like the secure version, right? As opposed to just the HTTP.
Yep, HTTPS is secure. HTTP is not.
Okay, so under conventional circumstances, can you break down what happens as far as accessing a website that's HTTP versus HTTPS versus a DNS, this DNS whatever that you're talking about?
Your DNS would actually give the translation for the website. So a website to you says www.whatever.com, and what happens here is that is open, so that's openly available over the public infrastructure, over your public internet. What happens with bad guy is he's out there with his Wireshark or his packet capturing system with his laptop war driving. He sees the traffic that is being generated by SuperTriz, and then he says, "Oh, SuperTriz goes to such and such bank. Let me capture that information, and then I can reroute him to my phony, fictitious bank that I set up that looks just like his. And the next time SuperTriz goes to that address, he can actually reroute you to his, and now he has your credentials because you just entered it in there, and now you're screwed. In a DNS over HTTPS, that would actually mask all that information to a secure server. So he wouldn't even know that what website you even went to.
Okay, so but he's trying to capture the information packet. So basically what you're saying now is that with the DNS, the information packet that's sent out will be encrypted?
The DNS over HTTPS would be encrypted.
But so the HTTPS isn't encrypted already?
The HTTPS is encrypted, but the website is not. So they know what website you went to, but from the DNS perspective, if it's over HTTPS, they would never know what website you went to.
Oh, okay. So now I understand what's going on. Okay, now that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Got you.
That's important because most people don't have the ability to protect themselves in that fashion. So a web browser doing it automatically makes a lot of sense. But what happens here is malicious actor decides he wants to go to illicit website for pedo website, for example, without getting too graphic. He's able to go to that website, and we as the law enforcement, we wouldn't be able to actually trace this guy down.
So it's almost like, is this like a similar concept to like a proxy server? For lack of a better description, it would be. So is this similar to, say, for instance, an Onion browser?
Who just said that, Gabe?
No, that was me.
Oh,
SuperTriz.
Yeah, to an extent, yeah, but it's putting a lot of security functionality into the transaction of the browser. So your data, not just your data in transit, but your session in transit as well. That most of that will be protected. If I'm Tesla, this is very important because I need to send software updates to my vehicle. And what happens when bad guy decides that he wants to disrupt that connection? He knows that Tesla Model S needs a critical update for braking. He can spoof that. But if you are using something like DOH, bad guy won't even know what's going on unless he has sophisticated tools to actually do it. The most he can probably do is a DOS attack, which is denial of service. He can denial of service the vehicle and send the vehicle offline.
And so this encryption process is based totally on the end user's computer software. So when, say for instance, you get the latest Mozilla Firefox update, it's all inclusive in that Mozilla Firefox. There's no other like server that is routed through or something like that. It just goes directly to that particular site, but it's encrypted from your browser.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
typically. Hey,
This is all above my head. I'm sorry if I'm slowing the stream down.
Nope. This is good for other people who are listening. What's going on, Gabe? You have any input on this?
No, I think that was pretty decent as it concerns that HTTP versus HTTPS, encrypted versus unencrypted type of web traffic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. DNS is like the backbone of the whole internet. It just says like, hey, this is translating, numbers and dots into, google.com.
Right.
So I could you can track people based upon like their DNS records. They have like where you can dump DNS records of certain type of internet activity. But yeah, having encrypted, right, HTTPS will definitely help to encrypt that web browsing traffic. So indeed. And I know you mentioned the Onion browser too. Yeah, because Onion browser is a whole different thing, right? That's like access to the dark web. It's a whole nother address space, which where people do funny things, which aren't probably very funny, illegal activity. So anyway, yep.
No, that's actually good. But what I was saying initially was that this worked best on IoT, mostly because IoT usually doesn't have any human interaction at the endpoint. So if I'm a nuclear facility and I need to get my devices online that are analog, and I need to make sure that I can monitor them, so they can send back information, data that's being collected. Bad guy who's sophisticated enough, APT, will look for ways of capturing that information. So if I want to take down a grid, all I need is all I need to do is monitor that traffic, so I can figure out what the DNS is and other functions of the network and the infrastructure itself. We just saw that with Honda last month. The infrastructure was actually compromised, and they were able to siphon off 40 gigs of data. Something like this would have actually may have prevented, the infrastructure from being having the DNS records and whatnot dumped, because it collected a whole lot of information such as IPs, MAC addresses, PII of the environment, protected information in the environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of times it just starts from, like, a lot of these compromises, it starts from an individual gaining access to like a corporate network. So, you get hired for a job, they give you, first name dot last name at whatever company.com, right? A lot of times people use, like Mike was kind of saying, like they use, well, I guess Mike did say that, but maybe in a previous conversation, a lot of people use the same passwords and credentials across multiple platforms, even in their work environment. So once you get into the IT network or the corporate network, a lot of times people are able to capture that information and be able to kind of pivot around and start to see different things, like evaluating what that infrastructure looks like, where you got Active Directory, different servers. So yeah, a lot of times they're just living off the land. They're just living off whatever is there within that corporate environment to cause havoc to the whole organization. Hopefully that makes sense.
Sometimes you don't even have to have an employee, because they got so much phishing. Like, I almost got caught up.
Oh yeah,
with a fisher, like this email. I forgot, because it was crazy, because I had been looking up something, like over the past month or so. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Right.
But when I went to my work email, because I rarely check my work email, but this day I had to check my work email and see what kind of BS was in there. So I would check my work email, And then I saw this this email, and it looked like a legit email.
Yep.
And so like I clicked on it, but then it took me to like this login.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's what got kind of, I was like, wait, hold on for a second. And so but like if somebody wasn't paying attention, they would have logged in.
It's not only that if someone wasn't paying, people don't pay attention all the time.
Mhm.
And that is like one of the that's the most popular methods for getting into an organization is through phishing attacks. Email.
Yeah, 80% of your attack surface or attack vector is actually phishing for the market. But not even just you entering your credentials, the fact that you clicked on the link now allows an exploitable attack to happen. So even though you didn't enter any credentials, the exploit may have already happened once you clicked on the link.
Because it runs on your local machine, and your local machine is connected to all the other machines in that particular environment. It's like literally like throwing, a bio terrorist like bomb or something in the middle of a square of a large city or something, right? It hits, it might affect one person, but because that one person is in contact with all these other people, it just spreads like wildfire. So you clicking that link, run something on your machine, and because your machine is connected to other machines, it spreads out and it causes other machines to get infected. Yes, it's really, yeah.
The
That's
IT is
called-
probably
yeah,
mad at me because I sure did click on it. I did tell them no.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't tell them. I sent them like this, like one of them little work messages that, because they say like if you ever see some phishing, let them know.
Yeah.
But I had already clicked on the link, so I don't know what they had to do after that. But
yeah.
Well, they can tell. They can tell what you did for the most part because they can follow your history. So if you did click on, and they're probably the ones who probably sent it out. But
yeah,
what I'm saying here is that for security awareness. But what I'm saying here is that even though you may have not entered your credentials, you may have already been compromised once you click on it. So quickest thing you could probably do is clear your browser cache, close out your browser, run a quick scan, whatever endpoint security you might be using, and possibly reboot your system, and then run a full scan from there. I know some endpoint security agents will run before you log in.
Yeah, like
as one of the say that again.
Yeah, like Nessus or whatever. It's like your system.
Yeah, and run a security assessment. A security scan on boot is what they call it. Mm-hmm. And then you have something like Qualys or Rapid7, some form of vulnerability management agent that will tell you what kind of patches are available for your machine that may be affecting it third party and operating system wise. So.
Yeah, right, it has a lot of different. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, go right ahead. Finish.
I was gonna say it has a lot of different like viruses and like malware, or just cybersecurity in general. It has a lot of different like relationships with kind of like that bio infection or what happens to the human body, right? Compared to like that of what happens with a virus, right? That's kind of what it's named after. It's a lot of similarities. Yeah. That's all I was going to say.
All right. This one is from Forbes.com. Why ransomware attacks on local government matter. From Atlanta to Baltimore to multiple cities in Florida, and most recently a whole group of towns in Texas, ransomware attacks against local governments will continue to increase in frequency and severity. This should come as no surprise. Ransomware is a type of malware in which the attacker encrypts the victim's files and demands a payment, usually in the form of cryptocurrency, in exchange for their release. Because the tactic is profitable and difficult to prosecute, the economic incentive continues to be a strong motivator for cyber criminals. Roughly 80% of the hacks are perpetuated by criminal actors as opposed to hacktivists or spies. According to the latest information from Hackmageddon, malware, including ransomware, is the top attack technique. Interestingly, while the actual number of ransomware attacks has dropped dramatically in the last couple of years, the revenue earned has not. Deliberate information technology disruption is considered a top risk to all organizations, both in terms of likelihood and potential impact, according to a survey of resilience professionals by DRI International. The IT disruption can occur as the result of a variety of incidents, from natural disasters to update errors. Intentional disruptions like ransomware magnify the potential damage. With money being the primary motivator, it is unsurprising that the biggest data breaches of the 21st century have been mostly perpetuated against private companies rather than government actors. A notable exception is the hack into the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. Hackmageddon reports that public sector targets rank third behind individuals and industry actors. While governments are not the top target, nor does the U.S. top the list of affected countries, according to CyberEdge, the threat still poses a huge and unique challenge, particularly for resource-strapped governments. A successful attack on the government system will have ripple effects beyond the organization itself. Because the governments manage sensitive information and critical infrastructure, outages could have national security implications, damage the local economy, and harm the general public more broadly. With that in mind, let's take a look at the issue from a different angles. Budget concerns, data availability, data integrity, privacy. So I'm not going to read all of them because we don't have a whole lot of time. But what I will say is that budget is always the number one reason as to why this doesn't or why this happens. They couldn't afford to upgrade their systems from Windows XP to Windows 7. Some of these terminals and the registry of motor vehicles are still using Windows XP for automating a variety of functions such as driver's licenses and permits, exams, just holding a lot of critical information that they can't get off because the application that was written was only written for Windows XP 32-bit, and now it's time to move to 64-bit. They don't have it, so that becomes a problem. They cannot get off because of the budget concerns there. Data availability. Once data becomes unavailable, you're screwed. Most hospitals, institutions like that, they thrive on data availability. So if the data is not there, they are SOL. Data integrity. So the integrity of the data, once data is compromised, the integrity is also up for question because you had a ransomware attack and they encrypted the files and then you paid the ransom, but your data is still lost. At that point, the integrity is already lost because the bad guy gave you back the data because you paid the ransom, but that data has also been exploited. So the integrity is lost on it. And then you have the privacy. So the privacy is just basically any bit of information, PII, PHI, other sensitive information needs to be protected. Unfortunately, the blast radius of most of this data in these environments is so broad that the privacy kind of trickles over into areas of what we call cross-pollination. So you have anything you want to add to this, Gabe?
No, nothing in particular. Just, like ransomware is just, a lot of people just click on a lot of stuff. And I think it's just exposing, especially here in 2019, it's just exposing how much trusting we are of the internet, and the fact that, a lot of times cyber crime's major motivation has been a financial motivation. They're just exploiting that. At a record rate here in 2019. So yes, it's just very interesting to see.
I got a question now for the ransomware. Do you typically see, say, for instance, a large corporation even a small corporation, small company, but just like a business entity in general. Say, for instance, somehow they've been compromised, like, say, for instance, because Super Triz clicked on this damn link in his email. Now is a ransomware exploit in the system. And so now they have, some protected information, whoever the hackers may be. Would you typically see a company actually paying the ransom to get the information back?
It happens all the time.
Absolutely.
Most hospitals, most hospitals have a budget set aside now for ransomware because they can't afford to negotiate, because once they don't have access to the patient health records, they can't do business. So that means they're out of business. So it's probably better to pay $20,000 in Bitcoin than to lose $80 million in revenue over a course of time. Because
so basically, I'm on the wrong side of the business.
Depends on which side you're talking about.
Why wouldn't the hospital have a backup?
That is, yep.
Why wouldn't they have a backup? Wouldn't it be simple, more easier to have a backup?
They should.
It's not so much of a backup. It's more about the ability to manage data. So you have data that is generated all over the place, whether it's these automated EKG machines. Super Triz probably knows better. Some of these systems that are monitoring patients that are connected to the network. You also have people at the front desk who are accessing information. Then you have information that's being stored in the back end on servers, other Epic, Meditech, all types of applications that are generating all this data and moving all this data around. It's hard to manage all that data because it's not centralized. It's moving all over the place. So the question here is, how do you protect that sort of data? It's difficult. You have to reduce the blast radius, and you have to figure out a way to mask the data that is being generated so that it's not leaking out too much patient health information. Now, go ahead.
What further complicates that, not to cut you off, but just want to throw this in here, is you have point of care devices that generate data. Say, for instance, you have a glucometer to check blood sugar.
Yes.
You have the point of care lab where you can actually draw blood and run simple lab values, and you have to plug that into a terminal, or either maybe there's some type of Bluetooth or infrared, or the infrared connection would be like a terminal, because once it goes to the infrared, it's actually connected to a terminal. So you have an influx of data from those devices. Like, I'm talking about every doggone minute somebody's plugging something in like that.
Yes. I mean, I think that even last year, I think there was a proof of concept where individuals were able to hack into somebody's digital heart monitor, right? and affect the actions of that particular device. So
it was a pacemaker.
Pacemaker. Yep. So it's like, it's just all types of, and that's where we get into that the attack vectors. What methods and how are these malicious individuals able to get access to this sensitive information? It's just like, and the fact that there's such a higher adoption of IoT and all these devices being connected, the attack vector, the space for an attacker to get in, it increases. Because it used to just be in a hospital, right? Those records used to literally just be on pieces of paper and locked in a vault, locked in a certain area. But then you get it on computers that are local to the hospital. And then those computers are now talking to other mobile devices like doctors' iPads that also sometimes connect to unsecure wireless. And then these pacemakers and these other electronic devices that are talking, the attack vector, it's just increasing.
Your blast radius is so broad. So to answer DE's question, how come they don't have backups? You do have backups. What happens here is that you have something called a warm site and a cold site and a hot site. Most of the time, your backup would be at a warm site so that you have quick availability to infrastructure and information, data generated. Usually takes you about 5 or 10 minutes to get that stuff back up and going. The problem is, like Gabe, Super True was mentioning, all of these devices are generating all of this information, and if one of those devices are compromised, it doesn't matter where your data. It doesn't matter what kind of backups you have. The bad guy's in your network already. So the question is, how do you isolate him? If he is in there, how do you isolate him from leaving and exfilling that data out of the network?
Yeah.
That if you can trap him in there, then you're good. All you have to do is report that there was a breach, but no data loss. That's better than Go ahead.
Well, my question is even beyond data capturing, right? So, for instance, like a pacemaker, because the pacemaker is actually an implanted device that's underneath the skin. Mm-hmm. There's an actual area that heals over it, so it can't be accessed from the outside. So what they do is they have devices. Like I remember I used to test pacemakers. You basically put this device on a pacemaker and you hook it up to a phone, and that's how you run diagnostics on a pacemaker remotely. And so there's some sort of communication between the device and the outside world. And so then you have other devices throughout the hospital. So my question is that, is it possible for somebody to actually manipulate the device, not necessarily to capture the data, but so that way they can change the functionality of it? Like, say for instance, you have some pacemakers that are called AICDs that deliver a shock.
Yeah.
So
yes.
if you alter that device and you have it deliver a series of shocks and cause a dysrhythmia, you can assassinate somebody. Yeah. So what's all that about?
Yeah, many of your politicians have pacemakers. At least the senior ones. I mean, if you count like Bernie Sanders and these other guys, the ones who are elderly, they would be vulnerable to something like this. I think even not Dick Cheney. What's this guy who just passed away? From the Vietnam vet.
Bush.
Oh no, the guy with the short arms, McCain.
Yeah, McCain. Look how vulnerable he was. He's in the middle of a congressional hearing, and he's playing, solitaire or bubble break on his iPhone, not paying attention. So what I'm saying here is the blast radius is so far and wide, man. It's hard to secure all this information, but that's why you have HIPAA. That's the whole purpose of HIPAA, was to kind of create a centralized standardization of practices to protect patient health records and the portability of it. However,
HIPAA is accessible to even the malicious individuals. They can learn what those standards are too, right?
Yeah, right. It's only as good as the device that is actually within the infrastructure itself. So if you have terminals and things like that are still using Windows XP, Windows 7, unpatched, can't be patched, out of end of life EOL, those devices are just as vulnerable as leaving the door unlocked.
We're just speaking about the health industry. I mean, even within like industrial control systems, even like now, I'm actually in New York right now, and we're doing assessments on smart meters, so like advanced metering infrastructure. So smart meter technology, right? And these smart meters are talking to the utility. They're at the customer site, they're talking to the utility, and it affects billing, right? Because the smart meters keep track of what your energy consumption is. I mean, there's been particular work that we've done where we've actually been able to, you can buy a certain, like a ABB or GE smart meter from eBay, and then you can reverse engineer it, right? Because you open the thing up, it's some type of storage system, which holds the operating systems. A lot of times it's some Linux-based system. You can modify that in order for the readings they can just read zero as if no one is ever there, right? There's so many different industries where modifications of the devices, right? Not only a pacemaker, but a smart meter can affect some of the business operations or even the safety of individuals. So it's just like cybersecurity. I mean, it's just such a broad and wide range of applications and things to protect, really. So, yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, some of these some of these devices, the scary part is that they don't comply with FDA, Food and Drug Administration. So we don't even, you have FDA, and then you have HIPAA, and then you just have general cybersecurity, NIST 800 53 or dash 53 and 61.
Oh man, the list goes on. NERC SIP.
Yep. There's so many. Yeah, there's so many guidelines and things of that nature that you have to actually abide by, man. It's difficult. So to answer your question, DE, it's a really difficult market to manage, and I don't foresee cybersecurity being the primary title going forward after like 2022. I think everybody would just have to have some form of cybersecurity literacy. So then it won't no longer be the cybersecurity expert. It would just be everybody's. Yeah, I think that's going to happen. I think everybody would just have to be cybersecurity literate, right? It would be kind of like the equivalent of understanding a second language. For a lot of other people who are foreigners here, that's just natural to them that they know a second language or their native language, and then they speak English as a second language or something like that. For us in the IT field, being a sysadmin, you're gonna have to take on cybersecurity responsibilities. Being a network admin, you're gonna take on cybersecurity responsibilities. So you're gonna have to learn that language too. So everybody will just be, cybersecurity at that point. That's my perspective.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the depth of understanding, because cybersecurity is one thing, right? It's a broad statement, but you have individuals who do penetration testing. You have individuals who do that incident response, digital forensics, reverse engineering, blue team, red team. I mean, you name it. There are so many different specifications within the overall field. I can't see that kind of mellowing out to, everybody does some of that, because you can kind of take away from some of the expertise if it's kind of just melded in. Like an IT admin cannot do what a cybersecurity specialist does.
But they may not have to, because a lot of your artificial intelligence will take over that.
That
right?
is so, yeah. We talk about that all the time. Like it's so the infancy of artificial intelligence at the moment taking over jobs is almost laughable right now, because it's at such an infant level that it can't take what, I mean, because people are hacking people. It's difficult to stop people with a machine if you're not kind of like savvy to how people do people stuff, if that makes sense.
Well, you have AI versus AI. Bad guys leveraging AI for themselves, and the victim using AI to defend themselves. So now you have AI wars, bot wars.
Is that common, or is that like
it's happening right now? I just went to a security.
I don't see it.
Went to a security meetup last month with the security scientists at Northeastern University, talking about this.
AI. Well, that sounds very academic. Like, I'm talking about application in the field right now.
No, that's what the meetup was about. They developed an application that's AI based to do exactly that, malware analysis, incident response, and it actually works. I know Rapid7's IDR uses a lot of AI, and it is pretty. I would say it's probably 80% accurate.
It's a lot of times machine learning at best.
Machine learning is a component of artificial intelligence.
Right, but it's not artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a whole nother level beyond just a whole bunch of algorithms that run that run based upon some type of baseline of activity. But sure, that's a whole nother discussion. But I'm just not seeing it. Honestly, right now I'm not at all.
All right, let me get to this next article. This one is from NewsU today. Blockchain standardization expected to happen by 2021, Moody's research. According to the recent research conducted by global rating agency Moody's, the blockchain industry will become standardized by 2021. The current lack of standards in operability holds back the securitization industry from adopting the technology. Blockchain, one of the most disruptive technologies of the previous century, could be a boom for the securitization market. It can decrease the cost of issuing asset-backed securities, improving transparency and increase security. However, the fragmented blockchain landscape creates operational, regulatory, and legal problems. Those parties that are involved in the securitization process can reap the above mentioned benefits only where there is standardized framework for a multitude of different distributed ledger platforms. Particularly, standardization could ensure better data availability and eliminate the need for mandatory reconciliation processes. On top of that, it will allow seamlessly conducting internal and external audits. Let's face it, regulators around the globe still struggle to grapple with blockchain terms. For instance, they will probably have a hard time understanding what beacon chain with the advent of Ethereum 2.0. Creating common terminology is necessary for regulators to come up with legal frameworks that would propel the adoption of DLT. As of now, ISO TC 307 is working on blockchain and DLT standards that span such areas as terminology, security, risk, legally binding smart contracts, taxonomy, and ontology. So this is interesting. Lionel, if you're available, I'd like to have your input on this.
Like the article says, I read a similar article to this, and it was saying that when I first read it or saw it, I'm thinking that they were talking about adoption. Instead of adoption, a faster rate of adoption, they're saying that the technology and its buzzwords that goes along with it will be more standardized. So I think it's important to separate standardization from adoption. Instead of saying it'll be more adopted, this is just another step on the stairway to adoption. Standardization, much like the internet when it first came in and computers, it was being more standardized. Different things were being more set in stone, so other organizations and governments and institutions could accept it easier, and the way to weave it into your business or government was easier. So that's what I think that they're trying to get at. It's more of a standardization of what it is. It's buzzwords. What does this mean? What does that mean? To help other people have an easier way of understanding it.
Yeah. But the term beacon, it was a bacon, sorry. Yeah, bacon chain. Is that it was a beacon chain? Have you heard of that? What is the story behind that term?
I have not heard of it, but just by thinking, well, not my understanding, but just my thinking is it's the main. It'll be a main chain of a particular blockchain, as you see now. Other other blockchains such as Bitcoin, and Ethereum have other side chains where specific transactions are made on those different side chains. Case in point with Lightning Network and Bitcoin. The Lightning Network only transactions that are worth a certain amount, no more than a certain amount. And once those transactions are made, the recording of those transactions are then recorded onto the main chain. So I'm guessing, just my guessing right now, the beacon chain is like the beacon. It's a homing device to let you know, okay, this is where we're located. This is the center. So I'm guessing the beacon chain is the main chain. That's what I'm guessing without actually knowing the definition.
All right. This one is from carscoops.com. Japan to let autonomous cars roam around its streets before 2020 Olympics. Japan will allow dozens of autonomous vehicles to freely roam around the streets near competition areas prior to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Bloomberg reports that the local government is working alongside car manufacturers such as Toyota and Nissan to roll out self-driving cars on its streets for a week before the games commence next July. Japan is reportedly keen to show it should say show off. It says show of its autonomous vehicles prowess on the world stage. Certain details about the program remain under wraps, but it is reported that up to 100 self-driving cars will be offering rides around the Olympics venues. Once the games finish, on-road testing for autonomous cars will continue throughout Japan until 2022, as the country wants to introduce self-driving cars to its streets by 2025. Toyota announced last month that it will have its all-autonomous electric-powered e-pallet concept up and running throughout the Olympic Village. The e-pallet, which will nevertheless have a human operator inside at all times, will offer enough room for up to 20 Olympic staff and athletes, or space for 4 wheelchairs and 7 stand-in passengers. Other models set to be introduced by Toyota will be the accessible people mover, set to run between venues for short distance trips, and the Concept I, which first unveiled to the world back at CES 2017, will serve as the operating vehicle for the torch relay and the lead vehicle in the marathon. Toyota will also be offsetting test drives of the Level 4 self-driving car and has already said that 90% of its entire Olympic fleet will be electrified. So this is stuff that we talked about before, and we talked about it the other night. Look at this thing right here. This is supposed to be autonomous. That's supposed to be a wheelchair or a scooter for that matter. Kai City was biting his nails and was up against the wall against the idea of just electric vehicles, and 2, autonomous vehicles. Article is saying 2025. Super Triz, you have anything to add to that?
Welcome to the future.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, this is interesting. You know, it does take a country, you know, like Japan, to really push the envelope from that regard because of their space constraints. We're probably more reluctant to actually push this technology into the marketplace. I won't say reluctant, but we're not as compelled. We'll just say that we're not as compelled because you know we don't have those space constraints. And so with introducing the autonomous cars, it'll work well in areas where space is a concern because you're able to maximize you're able to maximize your landscape by not having 8, 9, and 10 lane roads. You can have less number of lanes and then smaller lanes as well, because with the autonomous vehicles, because they can all communicate with each other. Hopefully, I would imagine that would be the plan at some point, to have the autonomous vehicles communicating, even if it's rudimentary, so that way they're able to distance themselves appropriately. Mm-hmm. And so that way you can actually have a more consistent speed, because that's what really creates the problems with emission. Well, even though they're probably going to be electric, so that emissions will be concerned. But if you have a consistent speed, the energy consumption goes down, the efficiency obviously goes up. Mm-hmm. The time to actual go from one area to the next. So I think as much as I enjoy driving, I think that this technology will really change things, and it could come at a better time.
Yeah, I mean, 2025 is not that long away. You're talking by the next presidential cycle. I mean, this is what they're talking about, and they already have the vehicles ready to go. It's just a matter of getting the testing done. So it's something to think about, because all of these, because once Japan goes, Japan's a part of the G20. They're a part of the G7 as well, or the G8 for that matter, minus Russia. And once the G countries adopt the technology, and then it becomes standard. So the reason why we don't really forcefully go for it in the United States is because we lack infrastructure. You can't even fill a pothole in some of these areas, and you want to put an autonomous vehicle on the road? No, it's not just going to happen that easily. Um, what's going on, Ty City? Do you have anything you want to add in terms of autonomous vehicles?
Hey, what's up, Mike? One of the I guess what you would call an IoT company. I guess I wouldn't call it a cryptocurrency, but IOTA is supposed to have a contract with the city of Austin.
Oh,
Where
really?
they putting something together down there in Austin. And
Lionel, do you know anything about that? I
My
think
bad, I
Lionel.
was muted. No, I don't. I don't.
yeah, because I think they also they BMW. They've been working with some open source stuff with BMW too.
Mm-hmm.
BMW have partnered with different blockchain. I know they partnered with VChain to do records keeping. I think they're still doing IOTA is mainly IoT based, and not specifically a blockchain. It's a hash graph, but still, nevertheless, it's splitting hairs. They are more IoT based, and I wouldn't doubt they are working on something with the city. Austin, is more tech forward, so I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that they're trying something like a smart city. I wouldn't doubt that at all. But I haven't specifically heard of that deal.
Yeah, yeah. So, Ty, what do you think about autonomous vehicles, man? 2025.
Man, I just don't want to be removed from the operating of the vehicle. That's my thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, one of the things that I'm thinking about when you read that article is that Japan wants to get in the market before China, and because China has got the same plan, they want, I think it's like 40%. Can't remember the exact numbers, but China wanted a big portion of their vehicles to be either non-polluting, either electric or hydrogen. And then the other day I saw an article where they made a hydrogen car that can get like 300 meters or 400 meters on a car or something like that.
Yeah.
And the technology to make the hydrogen was cheaper than the current technology. So Japan now is got to either stay ahead of China because the Asian market for cars is so big. You got the amount of cars that you see in China. People think of China as being poor, but if you go to Hong Kong, I mean, for instance, it can take you an hour to get from drive 2 miles in Hong Kong, especially if you're going into the city.
Mm-hmm.
Philippines is the same thing. In Manila, it's it's a nightmare from 5 a.m. in the morning to 11 p.m. at night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in Singapore, you gotta get a parking space, a place to put your car before you can get a car. So the Asian market for automobiles, and don't talk about India. India, ooh, Delhi is madhouse. So they're trying to keep ahead of the Chinese, and I'm watching the competition, but bringing the cars to the U.S. is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be more difficult because you got Tesla here, and unless Toyota can make a better car, I mean one that's going to drive Tesla out of the market,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they can survive here, but in Asia, they will get it done.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, China has Qingdao. I think that's the name of the city. That's pretty much going autonomous. But you're right about Japan trying to compete. They do have a lot of pride involved in this to try to show up the other Asian players, such as South Korea, China, even
Even India.
yeah, India. Yeah, I was gonna say India. So they have
Yeah.
they have a lot on they have a lot riding on this. And unfortunately, in the United States, you can't really get this sort of flexibility because you have too many states that have too many laws, that have too many standards and statutes and things on the docket that doesn't allow for that sort of state to state coordination. So in places like New England, that could actually work, right? You can come from Rhode Island, Providence, and shoot your way up through Massachusetts and go all the way up to New Hampshire, almost in a single straight line. And an autonomous vehicle would actually work well in that area if they could actually cordon off a section of the road for that. But
Yeah, but even in America, emissions is big business. You know, uh, just even having emissions testing, the equipment that it takes to do it, like that's a whole industry. Even with the diesels and the trucks, they have to buy DEF now for the last 4 or 5 years. You know what I'm saying? It's big business in emissions.
yeah, so they're probably the
Even
ones slowing down electrification of cars.
exactly. Even with regulations and things of that nature, you got people that lobby for these emissions control systems.
Hmm. Yep. All right, let me get to this next article from space.com. Watch NASA's Lemur robot climb a cliff in Death Valley as practice for Mars. I won't play the video because we'll get flagged for it, but I'll read the caption. While the Curiosity rover is adept, it can't climb walls or scale the polar caps on Mars. To push the capabilities of crewless rovers on the Red Planet, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory is developing some far-out concepts for climbing robots that could explore hard-to-reach points on other worlds. JPL's limbed excursion mechanical utility robot Lemur was originally designed to do repairs on the International Space Station. And while that repair program is no longer around, engineers continue to test the robot and use their experiences with Lemur to derive exploration robots for future missions on Mars or on far-off moons. In early 2019, Lemur made it up steep walls during a field test in Death Valley, California. It scaled a cliff using tiny fish hooks embedded in each of its 16 fingers. While en route, the robot also searched for ancient fossils to simulate searching for life on distant worlds. The Lemur has so far inspired 5 other robots for future exploration. Yeah, this is pretty interesting.
Think about some of the applications that could be had here on Earth as far as rescue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of using a human, have that robot going to some of these avalanche victims and, you know, maybe bombing victims and whatnot. And shit, probably could have used this robot to free Kevin Hart from his wreckage.
Oh man.
Coal mines and stuff like that. That's a good point, man.
Yeah. It'd be an expensive rescue, but it's a rescue nonetheless.
So, okay, so with the rover technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have drone technology,
Mm-hmm.
and we also have like 3D scanning and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be better to just like, I mean, of course, if you're taking samples, like what's the point in roving? Like
Mm-hmm.
all the time. I understand that you would want to rove, but
yeah, but well, you know, with a drone, there's going to be a weight penalty, or actually a weight restriction. As far as, you know, it requires a significant amount of energy to get something in the air, versus like an actual rover. The actual payload is, I would imagine, is significantly greater, and you still have that ability to you know, get into traverse difficult territory terrain.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. It probably, yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and get off. I am tired. I can't.
Hey, hey, have a good one, bro. Have a good one.
All right, y'all.
Peace.
All right, y'all take it easy.
All right, let me get on to this next article. This one is from cargofacts.com. Yamaha partners with Austral to expand drone operations in Kenya. Hey, Ty City, can you mute up, please? While major integrators, okay. While major integrators and e-commerce giants are navigating the potential use of unmanned aerial vehicles or drones for cargo delivery in North America, Europe, and China, Kenya-based drone startup Astral Aerial Solutions, an affiliate of Astral Aviation, is pursuing drone projects of its own from the company's base in Nairobi. Astral Aerial Solutions and Japanese drone manufacturer Yamaha Motor Company are partnering to provide last-mile air cargo and crop spraying drones throughout Kenya. Under the new agreement, which was signed last week at the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, Astral Aerial Solutions will begin using Yamaha's Phaser RG2 automated helicopter drone, developed for a variety of uses, including remote deliveries, crop spraying, and overhead structural inspections. The Yamaha Phaser RG2 drone is a commercial drone for automated flight to uninhabited areas out of visual range. The UAV is capable of carrying maximum payload of 35 grams and can fly at a maximum altitude of 2,800 meters with a cruising range of 90 kilometers. That's pretty fucking good. The move serves Astral Aerial Solutions' larger aims to provide drone services across Africa for a variety of sectors, including humanitarian cargo, air transport, medical deliveries, aerial mapping and imagery, aerial surveillance and security, agriculture, oil and gas services, and emergency response. For Yamaha, the agreement expands the reach of its expanding drone operation. The Phaser model is Yamaha's latest helicopter drone to receive FAA approval in the U.S. following its RMAX drone model. The company drones are already utilized for agricultural applications in Japan, where last year they carried out pest control for 35% of the country's rice fields. Last year, Yamaha Motor Corp USA applied for a FAA exemption to begin using the Phaser RG2 drone model for select commercial agricultural spraying operations in the U.S. Agricultural applications are seen as a stepping stone to future cargo operations. So once again, we see the continent is taking steps forward that is not seen here on in these melanated sectors. So it's a matter of keeping up now.
I'm actually quite impressed with that actual payload. I mean, the range is impressive as well, obviously, but yeah, the payload, and I'm not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm wondering if, because this is a departure from the conventional drone design that I'm more accustomed to, because this looks actually like a miniature helicopter. Could that have something to do with the range and payload capacity?
I think the payload capacity is probably the heaviest object of it, right? So the helicopter probably weighs nothing. And it's just a matter of being able to hold something like that. So based on the design, based on the way that it looks like it's designed, it looks like it was designed strictly for that purpose. But the range is what concerns me. So you're talking about a drone that can fly from practically from Massachusetts to Rhode Island quite easily, and maybe even back.
So with that particular, I mean, but so what I'm asking is that the compelling factor to make it a helicopter design does the helicopter like design contribute to its enhanced
Yeah.
capabilities? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. 'Cause it's a proven design, right? I mean, you've done it 1,000 times before. It's bound to work 1,001 times. So
But
a
what that
quadcopter drone would probably be a lot more difficult.
but with this helicopter design, obviously a helicopter is more complicated to stabilize, as we've seen with over history with the helicopter accidents because of the design, because you have that rear rotor that's responsible for maintaining the attitude of the vehicle of the aircraft. So as opposed to the drones, they have like multiple rotors that kind of assist with the stabilization process. So I'm guessing there will probably be some type of computer aided, to kind of keep that, because I've actually sat in a helicopter simulator, before, that was actually designed just like a helicopter. I mean, and it's it's more complicated than a motorcycle, because you're using your feet and you're using both hands to actually control it. So you're like rubbing your stomach, and patting your head, and doing a dance step at the same time.
Well, you have to keep in mind. I mean, this stuff is pretty automated at this point. Even your newest helicopters, commercial helicopters, are pretty automated. And I think we covered one before. I think either Airbus or Bell basically has designed a helicopter that can land itself. It doesn't even need it doesn't need a human to really interact with it. And if there is a imbalance in wind, it actually corrects itself.
Oh, really? Well,
yeah, these are like new helicopters that are coming out. So I don't know if the military may have already had this stuff. DE, do you know anything about self-correcting helicopters?
So with the technology is changing now. Before, you had to fly a helicopter manually, but with the changing technology now, you have a computer that can take over part of the say, instead of having a stick where it's sitting between your legs, you got a joystick.
Yeah.
You can put on the side and manipulate the pitch and everything on the helicopter. You got switches on there for collective and everything else. And the computer is taking your input and translate it into movement to the helicopter. So you have a better operating machine. And with these drones, you have when you have a drone, say, with 4 rotors on it, you got 4 different areas on that piece of equipment that the wind can affect. Either you're moving forward or left or right, the wind can push it either way. When you got a helicopter pointed in the direction that's going, unless you got a really strong crosswind, then it won't affect the helicopter because the helicopter only got 1 rotor. I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying. Yeah, clearly.
No. It makes sense to me.
Right, because now your multi-rotor, it's gotta, each one of those rotors have to adjust for the wind, crosswind or updraft, downdraft, and all that in order to keep you steady and moving at the altitude and speed that you want to go at. Whereas the helicopter now is built, it's slimline, it's got, if you look at that helicopter, the body around that, a drone don't have a body around its rotors. It's not encapsulated.
Right.
Right. So everything on the helicopter is different.
Yeah, the Chinese drone that I had a couple years ago, which is fairly large too. I forget the name of it now. That thing was pretty advanced back then, and it could do everything that you're saying that it should. So, and that was back in 2015. I had a drone. This thing was massive. I'm not sure if they even make it anymore, but I paid a pretty good grip for it back then. But that thing could land and take off on its own and handle godlike conditions, high winds and stuff like that. So What ended up happening, man, is that the drone went out of range and then it landed on someone's roof and the bird started attacking it. So I never got it back. But
with the drone stuff.
The drone went near a bird's nest. I think it was like a hawk's nest or something like that, and it attacked it. So go ahead, Ty City.
No, I was gonna say with the drone technology, I wonder what we don't get, what we're not seeing right now. I always think about because I know Amazon is real big on drones too, but they play in the background right now.
Well, because they're not a drone company, they're into robotics because they bought Kiva Systems, right? So Kiva Systems is a Massachusetts-based robotics company, probably one of the best in the country. And that's how they get their Amazon warehouses under control because of the Kiva Systems.
I think I was reading something where they had something like a cloud, like a drone, but it was like a mega drone with a bunch of little drones in there. It's using it like a cloud to like deliver packages.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me get to this next article. This one's from RT.com. Messages from other worlds. Mysterious radio signal detected by high-tech Chinese telescope. Chinese astronomers remain puzzled over a strange signal that was picked up by one of the world's most powerful radio telescopes. The rare phenomenon cannot be explained, and scientists say they don't want to jump to conclusions. China's 500-meter aperture spherical radio telescope, FAST, has detected a repeating fast radio burst, unexplained radio signals coming from outer space for the first time last week, according to reports. First discovered in 2007, FRBs are extremely rare, with fewer than 100 having been documented to date. FRBs usually only appear once, making them extremely difficult to track. Curiously, the FRB detected by the Chinese telescope has been observed before. Known as FRB 121102, the radio signal was first discovered in 2012 and later repeated in 2015. The signal came from a dwarf galaxy located 3 billion light years from Earth. Between August 30th and September 3rd, FAST recorded dozens of pulses from FRB. While undoubtedly exciting, not enough is known about the enigmatic signal to draw any conclusions about what could have created it, according to Zhang Xinzhen, an assistant engineer with the National Astronomical Observatories of China. Some theories have already been ruled out, though. The astronomers say that they are certain that the signal is not the result of interference from aircraft or satellites. The scientific community remains baffled by FRBs and where they come from. Maybe somebody send a signal for help. I mean, this is what gets my mojo going, because people have been saying for years, oh, there's no such thing as space, and especially in the manosphere, these flat earthers, these guys who don't believe that space even exists, are gonna be so quick to say that there's no such thing as aliens, and you have signals coming from different galaxies, and you think you're the only ones around here.
Well, here's the issue. When they said the signal is coming from a galaxy, that makes me wonder if it's from a quasi-stellar activity, meaning that it said from a dwarf galaxy. So as we understand, most galaxies that we're aware of are rotating around a massive or supermassive black hole. Which a singularity. So you have a overwhelming amount of energy being generated as the hydrogen gas from surrounding stars actually accumulate around that accretion disk, and so you have a spewing of X-rays and radio waves from the black holes, and it pulsates. So we know that happens just with black holes. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily indicative of some type of extraterrestrial life form attempting to, contact, other inhabitants of the galaxy. I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, I would hope not. Well, because the thing about it is that because people act like okay, we see how we act, even what we deem to be inferior life forms. We capture them and we tag them. We use them for food. We use them as pets. We experiment on them. So imagine if an entity were to come, some enigmatic, extraterrestrial life form who have to, if a life form has a technology to traverse the galaxy or the cosmos for them, maybe they come from a whole different galaxy. That's even scarier. If they had a technology to come here, number one, are they carbon based or are they silicone based? What type of bacteria are they bringing with them, or viruses from their home world that may endanger us? Number one. Number two, once they actually land here, what's their disposition going to be towards the life forms here? And so, but before they actually, deem Earth a suitable habitat for them, they will have to perform some experimentations. And so, who are the test subjects? Us. So they would probably expose us to certain things. I mean, it's actually kind of scary.
Well, yeah, it's your point, man. About them having bacteria, things like that. I mean, we know what the bacteria on Earth does to people. I mean, but I also think that if you're talking about them coming from a different galaxy, 3 billion light years away or wherever it is, they're already ahead of us, right? We're playing catch up with them. They're not playing catch up with us.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like bacteria, they probably get rid of, show us some.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably, I mean, they're adapting to their environment for obvious reasons. So what I'm thinking here is that maybe humans are the aliens, and they're probably normal.
And then, okay, and so then you got to ask yourself, what technology would they have to actually be able to travel light years? So are we talking about some type of
Teleportation?
space-time or some type of space-time warping? Like, think about the application of being able to warp space-time and how you can disrupt, atomic bonds. If you could warp space-time and direct a space-time deformation at a specific target, I mean, this is technology that we would have absolutely no defense against. So if they came here, they would just decimate us if they wanted to.
Like Spaceballs, they come with a vacuum cleaner out in space.
Yeah.
I read about this earlier today, but not too long ago, I read something else saying that the signals are getting stronger, and that it's definitely like it's organized. That's what they're saying right now.
Well, I mean, if you ask some of these some of these magos in the manosphere, they'll tell you that they got signals from the galaxy too. Probably a Samsung Note or something like that.
Neil deGrasse was talking about a telescope. They're trying to put a telescope on this mountain range, but these indigenous people are like protesting against it. But he was saying that they have to put the telescope at that specific point to see something.
That's what they say.
Yeah, that was interesting to me too.
Well, the problem is with the when you look at, it's hard to explain, but same concept as, okay, so if like when an Olympic ice skater, and they're doing their little spin, right, and they tuck their arms in to conserve angular momentum, whatever, right? So their core is rotating faster than their shoulders. So if you were to draw a line midline, that actual point in their body is rotating faster than, say, their shoulders are. That's because, so that's because the actual the distance that their shoulders are traveling through space is a greater distance. So when you look at our vantage point here on Earth and we start looking out at the cosmos, right? There's a large amount of landscape for us to be able to view, extremely large, especially the further out you go. You start talking about the observable universe is about, I think I can't remember how many light years it is, but when you talk about the observable edge of the universe, right, you're talking about an infinitesimally a large amount of space to actually be able to catalog and monitor. So you need like an array of telescopes to kind of plug up those holes, you know, because one telescope is only going to cover like a fraction of a fraction of space.
Hey, y'all familiar with the telescope that the Catholic Church have?
Huh?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, they have more than one. They have one in the Vatican. They have another one South America, I think.
Yo, you go down that rabbit hole, bro. Hey, it's crazy.
So what's the question?
Got information that a lot of people don't have, man. It's they've been
Exactly.
collecting information from people's libraries. Then they burn down the library and keep the rest of it.
They got a telescope that they actually named Lucifer, and it films certain light to see different things.
You were gonna say something, D?
Oh, I was just gonna say the Catholic Church find books that speak of certain things, and then they burn the rest of them and keep the only one that's surviving.
Mm-hmm.
So the knowledge is never passed on until somebody later on comes out.
Don't forget the Africans were studying this stuff before the Europeans got there.
Oh yeah, long time ago.
Studying levitation and whatnot. What were you saying?
Y'all about to get into a deep wormhole. Not a rabbit hole. This is a wormhole.
No, I know, but yo, Google, just whenever you get a chance, search that Lucifer telescope, bro. That I thought it was a joke.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, this thing sounds interesting, Mike. I mean, what do we do when we find something like that? What do we do? Do you reply, or do you
Hell no?
Silent?
Hell no.
Or do you keep silent?
You know what it is? It's basically alien fishing.
Oh man, this is some conspiracy.
Yeah, it's alien fishing. Do not respond to that email.
Well, you know, we read an article last year talking about this, man, that the bacteria could be, that there's a possibility that bacteria that form human life may have come from an asteroid that hit Earth. Now, if we know that Africans, the melanated people, were the original people, what's to say that Africans did not travel billions of light years from a different galaxy on an asteroid and landed here? But that's a whole nother discussion we don't have enough time to get into.
Yo, listen to that Neil deGrasse interview with Joe Rogan. He was on one with that one.
Well, they smoke weed over there, so I'll give it a green.
Well, I'll say this, right? And I'm gonna keep it brief, but when you look at civilizations of antiquity, advanced civilizations of antiquity, the commonality of building pyramids, that phenomenon has yet to be explained, how you have civilizations from different parts of the world with a proclivity to build pyramids. And then you look at the construction of some of these pyramids, the massive technological feats to create some of these like when you actually look at the actual engineering process of some of the components of some of these structures, when we talk about Mayans, Aztecs, and the Egyptians, when we look at that time period, what we find is that the technology didn't exist to make some of these surfaces and to make some of these blocks that interlock, smooth surfaces, smooth edges, of massive weights. The technology didn't exist to make some of these structures, or at least from our standpoint, because the period after the construction of these surfaces was actually a step backwards. So how is that possible? So the question it becomes, okay, was there some type of, like Mike V said, was there some type of extraterrestrial origination of some sort? Who knows?
Well, that's the probability now. That and supposedly that's why they're researching Mars and all these other planets, right? That the idea was that bacteria could actually travel on a lot of these asteroids, and which is what they found. That there's different forms of bacteria that can be transported via these rocks as vehicles, and there's nothing to say that there's no counter evidence to suggest that it did not happen. So one point you're saying this is that maybe that could explain why the original people were so adept at certain things, man. I mean, we read an article earlier about left-handed people being more fluid in different languages and linguistics, speech and linguistics. Before the Europeans got to the continent, you know, for what it's worth, I mean, Africans were involved in mathematics, you know, heavily involved in mathematics, heavily involved in multiple different languages and writing, you know, calligraphy and all types of abilities. I mean, the first tablet computer was developed in Africa. If you go back and do your research, before there was an iPad, there were tablets there. We know that the Africans were studying some heavily butter-laced stuff, man. Let me get to this next article, then we can open it up. All right, this one is from digitaltrends.com. Mars was once an ocean-covered planet with a thick atmosphere like Earth's. Today, Mars is cold, arid desert, but billions of years ago, Todd City, you have to mute up, please. It could have been a lush planet covered in surface water, not so different from Earth. But the big difference between then and now is the Martian atmosphere, which is now thin and spare, but was once thick enough to retain heat. The trapped heat allowed water to build liquid on the surface of the planet, which is the key for the possibility of life existing there. Scientists want to know more about Mars's ancient atmosphere, but both about its composition and the way it's fostered the environment on the planet and about how long it persisted. One way to study this question is by estimating the thickness of the ancient atmosphere by looking at the presence of the oxygen isotopes. Isotopes are versions of an atom, in this case, oxygen, which has a different mass than usual due to having a different number of neutrons. If an isotope is heavier, it is more likely to stay in the planet's atmosphere. Lighter isotopes are more likely to be lost in space. When compared to Earth, Mars has more of a heavier isotope. In proposition to a lighter isotope, the scientists could use the information to estimate how fast the atmosphere of Mars could have escaped. However, the ratio between these two isotopes is not stable over time. A new study can explain this as the ratio changes throughout the Martian day. Previous measurements on Mars or from Earth have obtained a variety of different values for the isotope ratio. Lead author Timothy Livingood explained in a statement. Ours are the first measurements to use a single method in a way that shows the ratio actually varying within a single day, rather than comparisons between independent devices. In our measurements, the isotope ratio varies being from being about 9% depleted in heavy isotopes at noon on Mars to being about 8% enriched in heavy isotopes by about 1:30 p.m. compared to the isotope ratios that are normal for Earth oxygen. So I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but something was there at some point. If there was something built there, it there's no artifacts of that, so there's no building structures or anything like that. They haven't yet to find any fossils, but then again, fossils, you have to excavate to get fossils, so they haven't been able to do any sort of that sort of excavation, at least not as of yet. So I'd be interested in seeing what they find underneath the surface.
In
Also,
my opinion, they're getting closer and closer to saying that Mars and Earth were once one planet. That's my opinion.
Really?
Yep. The similarities are too great.
Hmm.
And some of the books that I read even talk about this these wars that were fought in heaven, how Mars were formed, and then how Mars turned around and attacked the Earth, and all that is that, stories. So-called mythology is actually could be real.
Hmm. You were gonna say something, Tassie?
no, I was told that Mars is red because it's actually like a rust, pretty much like a rust, like a mineral rust over the surface,
Hmm.
and rust will be from different elements interacting with water.
Hmm. So you think there's something up there metallic?
Well, yeah, that's what I was told,
Hmm.
but
It could very well be. I mean, based on the research they've been doing the last 20 years on it, I haven't seen any evidence that there's any sort of building structures that were once there at some point, even in terms of like pyramids or something like that, stone structures.
yeah, but rust is actually a living organism. Rust is actually a living organism.
Okay.
So like um that's why it derives from water and minerals.
Hmm.
It lives.
Hmm.
The, you kill rust with when you seal it off from water.
I thought you used WD-40 for that.
Well, it's a penetrant. It's a water
You're a silly ass
repellent.
cat, man. You're a silly cat, man. All right, let me get to this next one from the New York Times. This is the last one. India says it has located um, Chandrayaan-2 lander on moon surface. A day after India lost contact with a robotic spacecraft that was launched toward the moon's south pole, the chairman of the country's space agency said on Sunday that the lander has been detected on the moon's surface. K. Sivian, the director of the Indian Space Research Organization, told the national news outlets that a thermal image has been taken by the Chandrayaan 2 mission's orbiter. He said it was still unclear whether the lander was damaged, though he expected it had experienced a hard landing. We are trying to establish contact, he was quoted as saying by Asian News International. The thermal image from the orbiter has not been released publicly. A spokesperson for the space agency did not respond to requests for comment on Sunday. For years, Indian engineers have prepared for a landing near the unexplored South Pole, following up an Indian mission that orbited the moon and helped to confirm the presence of water ice in the lunar craters. A successful landing on the moon would have made India the fourth nation to accomplish such feat after the United States, Russia, and China. The lander carried a six-wheel rover, the Indian flag, and equipment to determine the composition of the moon rocks and make other measurements. The cost-effective mission has stirred a strong sense of patriotism in India. Before the lander's rapid descent earlier Saturday, space enthusiasts gathered for viewing parties, and a news channel live streamed a choir singing a Hindi song, or Better Than All the World. So, what it sounds like to me is that this thing took a hard hit. And it may be in pieces. But the article I read earlier before firing off the hangout was that they've established contact with it. What that means, I don't know. The Israeli and Indian missions cost 100 million to 150 million, far less than those typically launched by the European Space Agency and NASA, which has been preparing for its own low-cost robotic moon missions. So, ADOS, they want to boost their morale, man. The idea here is to get something out in space. Not put, not throwing up billy goats all over the place and red goats everywhere. I don't think that's the strat. I don't think that's the business. When you're a nation state trying to compete.
Yo, didn't the Chinese find a NASA satellite that they lost not too long ago? I think it was like a year ago or so. They actually found it, and we had wrote it off, like millions and millions of dollars of equipment. They wrote it off, and then China found it.
Where did they find it?
They actually they started making contact with it.
Wow. All right, this is a recent article from 5 minutes ago. Lander Vikram intact, lying in a tilted position on moon surface, claim sources. No confirmation yet. And a development that could turn out to be a major breakthrough in ISRO official associated with Chandrayaan-2 mission has claimed that the lander Vikram is lying on the surface in a single piece and is in a tilted position that after having a hard landing. However, the space agency has refused to confirm the report. The space agency has lost contact with the Chandrayaan-2 lander Vikram moments before it was scheduled to soft land on the surface of the moon on September 7th. So, this is interesting. This is very interesting. I wonder how far it dropped. If it's tilted, that means that it didn't drop that far. It sounds to me like it may have dropped maybe 100 feet or something like that and just stayed in that one position. It weighs 3,200 pounds, so keep that in mind. That it weighs the same amount as like a small compact vehicle. Obviously, it didn't bounce, because if it did, it would be upside down. But it sounds to me like the thrusters failed at some point, whether it was halfway down or just before it landed. If it's sitting tilted, that would indicate.
Hey, Mike, you think a country could pull off something like this without anybody knowing it?
What do you mean?
Like, do you think let's say Canada sent something to the moon and they didn't say nothing to nobody?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, if you're gonna do something big like this, you want everybody to know that you're gonna do it, not to keep it a secret.
Yeah.
Especially if you're somebody like Canada or some Asian country. The whole point of doing this is to show is one, for prestige, and two is for human development, that you had the capabilities to do something like this. You want everybody to know that.
Yeah, but I kind of put this along the lines of maybe like nuclear weapons. Like, you don't want to show your hand to other countries.
Okay.
Because I think space exploration is pretty much been, if you was to like publicize it, it'd just be to snub your nose at the US.
Well, because the U.S. is the most advanced nation. You have to remember that after World War II, every other nation was picking up the pieces after the war. Decolonialization limited everybody else's abilities to actually partake in these sort of ventures. So the United States was unblemished by most of the catastrophes that happened around the world at the time. So they had a full head start, um, and that's kind of unfair. Everybody else was on their knees in mercy, while the United States walked away unscathed. I mean, yeah, they lost some soldiers in both theaters, but their intellectual capacity never faltered. So, in
Yeah,
fact, it got better.
I mean, within Operation Paperclip, most of that technology came from Germany, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, that's fine if it came from Germany, but the point of the matter is who got them put it into use first, right?
Yeah.
You still, even though it came from Germany, you still need some kind of wherewithal to actually put something like that up there. Um, it's still, some assembly required, like somebody else likes to say in the manosphere. So, um, I think that something like this, not even just putting something on the moon, but actually putting something into space would actually boost the morale of a lot of ADOS people, man. Because we look at what Black Panther from Marvel did to the morale of Black people, not just in America, but from around the world, man. That was serious. That was a probably one of the most serious moments since Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech. No, Black people haven't felt like that in a long time, probably since Obama came into office.
Yeah.
You need something like this to boost morale. And unfortunately, you look through the manosphere and you don't really see too much of that going on. I don't think that red goats, are inspiration for me at all. Anyways, I know Dr. Phoenix is in the chat, so shout out to Dr. Phoenix. I wanted to get Dr. Phoenix' take on this Indian woman giving birth at 72 years old or 73 years old.
Did she freeze her eggs?
Somebody hit it raw, but
What? What?
maybe DE might have an opinion about this. That's in his ballpark. So
What are you trying to say, Mike? I got all these old ladies in India.
we have no confirmation. So
Oh, twins? Wow.
Oh shoot. Yeah, but I've on the continent, you'll see women having what 12, 13 babies, and at 70 years old, they have children that are like 10 years old.
wow.
So I don't know. This yes, in India it makes headlines, but I don't know. To me, it's supposed to happen. It's
It doesn't happen for European women though.
right. No. Because the genetic makeup, the genetic makeup is thing. It's
So can
they
you
have to.
imagine being 15 and your mom is 100?
Well, our technology is going the opposite direction. So if you look back at history and see our technology, today's technology is in a way making us weaker people. Whereas before, in the past, men were stronger physically and mentally.
Right, and that's without steroids.
73 were twins. I thought it was just one kid.
Nah, man, that I find that to be very interesting, though. I find it to be very interesting because
But you gotta look
most
at her
women,
lifestyle. You gotta look at her lifestyle. She's a farmer, or wife of a farmer, so she's always moving. She's active. You know what I'm saying? Her body is still strong, not
mhm,
like a 60-year-old European woman, American woman,
mhm,
Caucasian American, who
mhm,
at 40 years old been sitting behind a desk for I don't know how long, been you
mhm,
know
Well,
their idea of work is not the same thing. Labor is not the same thing. They go to the gym and ride a bicycle.
mhm.
That's it for the day. You know, anything more than that, if they got to sweat doing something, is like it's a big thing. You know,
Mhm.
my question is, they say that she gave birth, but they didn't really specify uh about the actual condition of the babies.
They're
What's their
supposedly healthy.
cognitive abilities? Huh?
They're supposedly healthy.
Well, I mean, healthy, but well, there's other things of concern like
Okay.
mental retardation, developmental delays, and things of that nature.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was specified, but the well, here's the thing. Um, I definitely wouldn't recommend women to go this route because I've seen plenty of women in my career, you know, in their late 30s, early 40s, start having issues with their children coming out with, you know, cognitive deficiencies and Down
Mhm.
syndrome and things like that. Because what happens is that unlike men, women are born with the predetermined set of ovum. Men consistently make sperm throughout their lifetime. The actual
Mhm.
sperm production may slow up at some point, and the viability of some of the sperms may diminish, but there's
Mhm.
still sperms out there. And then non-viable sperms, usually can't swim, so they never actually make it to the egg.
Mhm.
Although a defective egg uh, has the propensity to be fertilized. Hopefully, the body's system of checks and balances will cause a miscarriage of a fetus that has too many errors with the genome, but sometimes it slips by.
Mhm.
Especially as you get older, the viability of the ovum decreases exponentially.
Mhm.
And environmental factors can speed up that process. So maybe because being in India, maybe she's not eating a lot of this processed food, and who knows what her diet and her fitness regimen consists of. But maybe she just got a combination of factors, just overall health and well-being, genetics, and just luck. Luck played a big role in this. I definitely would say that.
but wouldn't the doctors be monitoring her and the babies as and the process of time, from the day she conceived till the day
Well,
she had the babies, and be telling her,
all
advising
that
her
costs
if
money. All that costs money. And so if you're a farmer, I'm guessing she's in rural India, and maybe she didn't have access to healthcare like that, to have the consistent prenatal care. Who knows?
Mhm.
Um, but I will definitely say that if her twins are actually, first of all, to carry twins at that age, right?
Mhm.
So there's already issues, obviously, with twins. A lot of times, twins you can't carry them to term. So the biggest issue with a preterm child is lung development, actually surfactant development of the lungs that affects the ability of a child to breathe, spontaneously on their own. So, uh, twins, sometimes you got to have the babies early. So she got really, really lucky. I mean, this is like extreme, like winning the lottery as far as 73-year-old having twins, a 73-year-old with twins and having them to full term. I mean, and having them healthy. I mean, that's a lot of luck is involved with that.
You can't even get a millennial to go to the gym to Planet Fitness for $10. You got this senior lady, man. Somebody hitting it raw, man. So
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. We have to ask Ty City about that raw stuff. Ty City.
Hell nah.
Ty City. Ty City.
I'm
Ty
a-
City.
Hey,
Hold on. Ty City. Are you or are you not a father?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, okay then. So that's why I'm asking you. I ain't got no kids,
Yeah.
Ty City. Quit. Stop trying to act brand new, Ty City.
Nah, hey, let me tell you something though. I planned it.
Huh?
You playing 73-year-old?
Nah. Nah, hey, I'm actually a beta male incel who Persian.
I thought Dr. Phoenix would come on, man, but I see
Yo,
he's not
but
available.
that is crazy though. Our old lady just with twins.
Mhm.
Not me. Probably Mike.
Well, anything is possible, man. With the efficient emails, man.
Nah, man, I would. Mike just slid in there, man. Don't do it, man.
Well, see, okay, so now we gotta start asking ourselves. Okay, so now was he 73?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so by the time her children are 20, she'll be 93. Like, if first of all, the question will be, will she live that long? That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, what will her state of health and well-being be?
She'll be
at that
100
age?
something.
Huh?
She'll be over 100.
No, she's 73. When her kids are 20, she'll be 93.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah,
so,
I'm thinking 80.
hey, listen. We're doing American mathematics.
I think what they're saying in the article is that they're going to monitor her, because I mean, like you said, what would her future health be? Like, I mean, we know that years ago women were dying just from giving birth. So, and it probably still happens to this very day. Women.
Yes, it does.
Bleeding to death and shit like that, man. So.
Well, yeah, you have issues with women having strokes and all kind of stuff because of eclampsia and preeclampsia, all kind of stuff going on. But so my question also is that what about her cognitive health? Because as you get older, obviously we start having increasing the propensity of Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's. Then there's actually brain infarcts that actually interfere with cognitive abilities. Because as you get older, sometimes you have like these micro occlusions, and you have like these transient ischemic attacks that you don't even notice. You might have had it in your sleep, and you wake up with some residual numbness. You think so because you slept on your arm, but in actuality, it's because you've had a transient ischemic attack in your sleep, which which was self-limiting, but there's still residual effects that you may see the manifestation from a motor standpoint. But what about those manifestations that happen from a cognitive standpoint? And it could be incremental changes, like maybe changes in personality and just slight forgetfulness and anger that we just associate to old age. But actually, there's a cognitive decline, and that's going to affect her ability to actually raise those children.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if ADOS wants to survive, man, it may have to start knocking up some of these older women.
Well, see, the issue really isn't the women, because the women gonna have kids. It's just men choosing not to have kids.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, but Ty City, he definitely is not part of that group.
I mean, talking to some of these women in the manosphere, man, they always talk about they like having their club shut up. So,
Nah, I'm cool on that.
Ty City could break out the 50 cal.
Nah,
there you go.
Nah, hey, I got the little gun that they have in your boot.
Or the Derringer?
Yeah, I just keep the Derringer. That's it.
Oh, but okay, now Ty City.
It had
Ty,
one
you
bullet.
said-
It had one bullet in it.
Ty City, you said that you had planned it, but the question is, did she plan it?
Yeah, we both planned it.
Oh, y'all both. Oh, okay. So it wasn't no sneak drive by.
Nah, hell no. I made it all the way to 29.
Oh, okay.
Oh man.
Ah,
All right, let me get ready to shut this down, man.
nah, but on the cool, bro. Imagine being the doctor, bro. You giving birth to this old lady. A bunch of cobwebs come out.
Yeah, you ain't nothing. You ain't ish, man.
a big poof of dust come out.
No. Hey. She done
That's
had
similar
twins.
to that's similar
ain't
to
no
your
dust
Datsun
on that one.
240.
Ain't
Ah,
no
chill
dust
out,
on that
chill
one.
out,
She
chill
been
out,
putting
chill
that
out,
to use.
chill out.
That's your Datsun 240, man. You turn the key, man. You see all the types of backfires.
Yeah. So, you know, Ty like vintage club.
Yeah. Be on the Cougar apps, man.
Nah, no bullshit. I broke one of my keys off in one of my cars, man. I had the original key, and I used it for the trunk. I guess the trunk had tension on it because it had stuff in there. I broke the damn key. I was just sitting there like, damn, man.
There ain't no emergency latch.
Not on the old car.
Nah, not on the old car.
Can't climb in through the back seat.
Nah, I had to. It had a little bit left on it. I was able to get it out with like some needle nose vice grips.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let me shut this down. Thank you all for joining us. Hit the like button if you have not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. Also follow SuperTriz, youtube.com/SuperTriz. And if you want IT mentorship, we are still offering that. You want to get into IT as a career, we can help you out with that. You want to transition from one IT career to another, we can coach you as well. So that being said, we are out. Shalom.
Peace.